Hey guys, what's up? MadSeason here, back with another Legion class guide. This is an ongoing series where I go over the core gameplay of each class and spec in the Legion Alpha, and sort of give you an idea of how they're played and how their core mechanics work. In this video, we'll be going over the Destruction Warlock. As with most other classes, the Destruction Warlock saw some big changes in this expansion. I guess the biggest one is that we're no longer on the Ember system. We've officially switched back to the Soul Shard system, just like Demonology and Affliction spec. And just like those specs, you have some spells that generate soul shards like Immolate and Conflagrate, and other spells that spend them such as Chaos Bolt. Don't take that as Destruction being similar to those specs though. Trust me, they're very different. The overall class identity makes you feel like this unstable Chaos spellcaster, with a heavy emphasis on unstable because you have a lot of effects that rely heavily upon RNG. This spec feels really volatile in the sense where if you're lucky you can deal some crazy high damage, but if you're unlucky not so much. It definitely has its highs and lows, and to like it, you'll have to embrace that randomness factor. It'll be a very niche playstyle that I think a lot of people will love or hate. As usual, just a disclaimer before we begin, the Warlock is not my main class on Live. I did a lot of training on both Live and Legion to get a solid understanding of how Destruction spec plays and how it's changed for Legion, but keep in mind this is from a very casual Warlock's perspective. Just something to remember when I talk about a spell or give my opinion on something. And by all means, if you catch any errors, feel free to let me know so I can patch them up with an annotation. Also keep in mind what you're about to see is all alpha gameplay, so things that you like or don't like are always subject to change. A lot of spells have been changed, removed, or added. I'll go over all of them one by one in the spell book, and I'll also show you them all in action so you can get a good idea of how this spec plays to see if you would like it or not. I'll sort of go over these in order of importance, putting a higher priority on the bread and butter abilities that make up the core of the Destruction spec, and at the end of the video I'll show you some real fights and narrate them a bit so you can see how all of it comes together. As I'm going through these, keep an eye on the bottom right hand corner of the screen if you want to see the tooltips for the exact numbers and such. Let's start with our Soul Shard generators. First up we have Immolate. This is still our dot. It has a base 1.5 second cast and it deals a small amount of initial fire damage to your target and some additional damage over 15 seconds. It has a base 3-second delay between ticks, which is increased by haste, and each tick has a 15% chance to generate a soul shard, and if it crits, it has a 30% chance to give you a shard. So it's similar to the Affliction Warlock's Agony, and if you have this on around 3 or 4 targets, the soul shard generation is quite nice, but it can vary wildly. Sometimes this will proc over and over and you'll have more shards than you know what to do with. Other times you'll be starved for shards because you're just getting unlucky with the procs. So this is the first of many effects that supports this new RNG based playstyle. Next we have Conflagrate. This is an instant cast spell that deals a medium amount of fire damage to your target, and it generates 1 soul shard. It has 2 charges and a base 12-second recharge. Next let's go over our soul shard spenders. First we have our classic Chaos Bolt. This has a base 3-second cast, it costs 2 soul shards, and it deals a heavy amount of chaos damage to your target. And just like in Draenor, this always crits, and your critical strike chance instead increases its damage. Not much else to say here other than that this is still our heavy hitter, and you can see some pretty big numbers if you get the right procs. Next up we have our AoE Rain of Fire, which surprisingly is now a soul shard spender. This costs a whopping 3 soul shards and it deals a heavy amount of fire damage to all enemies within the targeted area over 6 seconds. It has a 35-yard range and a base 2-second cast time. The soul shard cost is quite hefty, but like I said earlier, if you have around 4 targets afflicted by Immolate, you'll be generating a lot of soul shards, and that's when you want to start using AoE spells like this anyway, so it sort of works out. One thing to note is that this doesn't stack. Each enemy can only be taking damage from 1 rain of fire at a time, so it's better to stagger them. Next up we have our filler spell, Incinerate. This is a 2-second cast spell that deals a medium amount of fire damage to a single target. This is what you're going to be spamming when everything else is already set up and you don't have any soul shards. Next up we have Havoc, which is a little different. This marks your target for 8 seconds, causing your single target spells to also strike your marked target. It has a duration of 8 seconds and a cooldown of 20 seconds. As you may know, this was limited to 3 spells per cast, but it also had a 15-second cooldown. Overall, I think it's more powerful now. It's a really nice 2-target AoE to have, and we also have a talent that I'll go over later that makes it even better. We also got Drain Life as a baseline ability. This is pretty much our only heal, not counting Health Stone. This is a channeled spell that deals a medium amount of shadow damage to your target, and it restores a percentage of your life over a base 6 seconds. The heal increases as you gear up, although I'm not entirely sure what it's scaling from, maybe spell power. But as you can see here, when I'm naked it's at 18%, and when I'm fully geared it's at 24%, so this is something that'll get stronger as you gear up. Summon Infernal and Doomguard are still our big cooldowns. They both cost 1 soul shard, their cooldowns were bumped to 3 minutes, but their durations were also reduced to 25 seconds. The Doomguard still throws out single target shadow bolts at its target, and the Infernal stuns an area when you summon it and it deals some AoE damage. And just like in Draenor, these two abilities share the same cooldown, so you have to pick the best one depending on your situation. Next we have our defensive cooldown, Unending Resolve, which is still our shield wall and anti-interrupt. This reduces all damage taken by 40% for 8 seconds, and it makes you immune to interrupts and silences for its duration, and it has a cooldown of 1.5 minutes. And we of course still have our normal demons. You have the same 4 to choose from: the Voidwalker, the Imp, the Fell Hunter, and the Succubus. First up we have our tank, the Voidwalker, which has seen a pretty awesome reskin. And just like my Affliction and Demonology videos, I won't go over every single pet ability since it's not especially interesting. I'll only list the differences for the sake of not making this video an hour long. For the most part these abilities are the same, maybe just damage or cooldown changes. I'll still mouse over them here quickly if you want to pause the video and see for yourself though. For the Voidwalker we have Threatening Presence, Shadow Bulwark, Suffering, Shadow Shield, and Void Reflexes, which are all the same. The only difference is its Consuming Shadow spell, which has replaced Torment. This deals some light damage to all nearby enemies and returns it as life to the Voidwalker. Torment, if you recall, did some single target Shadow Strike damage, so basically it traded some single target damage for an AoE life drain to make it more tanky. Next up we have the classic Imp. Everything is exactly the same functionality wise. You still have Cauterize, Firebolt, Flee, and Singe Magic. The only big difference here is that Firebolt now has a 50% increase in damage if your target is afflicted by Immolate. Next up is the Fell Hunter, which is a little different. It looks like it lost Devour Magic, which used to purge a magic effect on your target and heal the Fell Hunter. You still have Shadow Bite, which deals some light shadow damage, and Spell Lock is also intact. It's a 24-second cooldown interrupt that locks out a school of magic for 6 seconds. And finally we have the Succubus, which remains unchanged. You still have Lash of Pain, Lesser Invisibility, Seduction, and Whiplash, which are all functionally the same as they are in Draenor. We also still have Command Demon. This is pretty much unchanged. This just commands your demon to use its main ability. The Imp will Cauterize, the Voidwalker will use Suffering, the Succubus has Whiplash, and the Fell Hunter will use Spell Lock. And we still have Health Funnel to keep our demons up when they run low on health. This takes 24% of your life over a base 6 seconds and returns twice as much of that as healing to your active demon. Next up we have Life Tap. This restores 30% mana at the cost of 10% health. Just like Affliction and Demonology, your mana will drain pretty quickly as you fight, so this is a really important spell to have and you'll be using it a lot in Legion. And we of course still have Fear. Nothing new here, just a single target Fear that has a base 1.7 second cast and a 20-second duration. And just like in Draenor, it's limited to one enemy. And finally we still have Demonic Gateway. This is pretty much the same. You bring out a portal that you and your party members can click on to zip across the area once every 1.5 minutes. Just like on live, it seems pretty restrictive on where exactly you can cast it, so you have to place it on relatively flat terrain. And that's pretty much it for all of the important combat-oriented stuff anyways. Everything else I didn't mention are still functionally the same pretty much, maybe just percentage or cooldown changes. I'll mouse over them here quickly and you can pause the video if you want to see the exact numbers. But abilities I haven't mentioned yet are Banish, Create Hellstone, Soulwell, Enslave Demon, Eye of Kilrog, Ritual of Summoning, Soulstone, and Unending Breath. As for passives, we don't have a lot going on. We only have 2 if you want to counter Mastery. First up we have Soul Leech, which actually used to be a talent. It has changed a bit. This causes all single target damage done by you and your minion to grant both of you shields that absorb 15% of the damage you deal for 15 seconds, up to a 15% of your max life. So just a nice defensive passive to have. Next up we have our new mastery, and that's Chaotic Energies. This now causes your spells to deal a random amount of additional damage to a maximum percentage, which is increased as you stack mastery. Any damage you take is also reduced by a random amount, once again increased with mastery. So as you can see here with my current mastery, it's at 61% and 13% for increased and reduced damage respectively. So any spell I cast can deal anywhere from an additional 0 to 61% damage, which is kind of interesting. It gives you the potential to see some really high numbers, especially with Chaos Bolt, since that already hits like a truck. This effect is the main reason why I say this spec depends heavily on RNG. You could get lucky and get a bunch of good mastery rolls in a row, and just deal some crazy damage, but the opposite could happen as well and you could struggle to keep up with other classes. And we're just getting started. This is one of the many layers of RNG Destruction has, so like I said, it's something you'll have to embrace for you to like this spec. Anyways, that's pretty much it for every ability and passive. If I didn't list anything from Draenor, it was either moved to talents, removed entirely, or they just haven't put it back yet. Next up, I'll go over the revamped talents. Just like the abilities and passives, I'll go over every single talent here and show you them in action. I'll also have a link to the talent calculator in the description if you want to see them for yourself. First up for the level 15 tier we have Backdraft, which used to be a baseline passive actually. It has been changed slightly. This now causes your Conflagrate to reduce the cast time of your Incinerate and Chaos Bolt spells by 30% for 5 seconds. As you may know, it used to be charge based, sort of like Havoc, and I'm not sure if this is a bug, but this actually only lasts for 3 seconds as opposed to 5 seconds, which is what it says in the description. So either they haven't updated the tooltip or they haven't updated the actual spell yet. Next up we have Roaring Blaze. This is another passive. This causes your Conflagrate to increase the remaining Immolate damage on your target by 50% until either Immolate expires or it's refreshed. This is a pretty good boost. Immolate's dot damage is close to the damage of 2 Incinerates, so it's pretty high already, so this makes it even better. It's worth noting that this stacks, so if you throw out 2 Conflagrates right after your Immolate, you can turn it into a pretty huge dot. Lastly, for the level 15 tier, we have Shadow Burn, which was also moved to talents. This costs 1 Soul Shard, it's instant cast, and it deals a medium amount of shadow damage to your target. If your target dies within 5 seconds of being hit with it, it returns 2 Soul Shards. A noteworthy change is that you can cast this whenever you want, as opposed to Draenor, where it was limited to targets under 20% health. For the level 30 tier, we have Reverse Entropy. This passively reduces the cast time of Chaos Bolt and Rain of Fire by half a second, and they also restore 35% of your maximum mana. This pretty much takes Life Tap out of the equation. Although the current mana costs are pretty big, with the rate of your Chaos Bolts or Rain of Fire if you're AoEing, you'll never have a problem with mana if you have this passive. Next up we have Fire and Brimstone, which is now a passive. This now causes your Incinerate to hit all enemies near your target. This is a huge boost to AoE damage. As you may recall, it was a toggled ability that made your Immolate, Conflagrate, and Incinerate AoE, but they also consumed Embers and dealt less damage. The only problem with this is we used to have it as a baseline ability, whereas now we have to get it from talents. Next up we have Mana Tap. This consumes a whopping 40% of your current mana, and in return it gives you a 10% increase in damage for 20 seconds. You already know my opinion on this if you saw my Affliction video. Like I mentioned earlier, as it stands right now, we already burn through mana very fast, so it's kind of rough to keep this up. It does change up your rotation a bit, but not really in a fun way in my opinion, because it already makes a weak part of the spec even weaker. Keep in mind though that it says 40% of your current mana, so the best time to use this is when you're almost out of mana right before you life tap. For the level 45 tier we have Demon Skin. This buffs your Soul Leech passive, causing it to passively recharge at a rate of 1% of your maximum life every 1 second, and it raises the 15% max life cap to 20%. Since it constantly refreshes, it also effectively makes it have an infinite duration. Remember, Soul Leech by default only has a 15-second duration, so it'll wear off if you're not doing any damage. This allows you to start off any fight with a 20% max life absorb shield, which is really nice. Next up we have Mortal Coil. This is mostly unchanged. This incapacitates your target for 3 seconds, and it also returns 11% of your maximum life. It has a 45-second cooldown and a range of 20 yards, down from the 30 yards in Draenor. Lastly, for the level 45 tier we have Shadow Fury. This has seen a nerf. This still stuns all enemies within a targeted area for 3 seconds, but now it also has a base 1.5 second cast time, so it's not something you can throw out on the fly. It still has a 30-yard range and a 30-second cooldown. For the level 60 tier we have another passive, Eradication. This causes Chaos Bolt to increase the damage dealt to a target by 12% for 6 seconds. There's really not much to say about this one. It's sort of similar to the Affliction Warlock's Contagion, and you already know my opinion on that if you saw that video. In my opinion, talents shouldn't be as dull as just a percentage increase to damage. It's not very interesting, and I think it's something that's better suited as an artifact trait rather than a full-blown talent. Anyways, next up we have Cataclysm, which is pretty much the same other than the fact that you can now place this wherever you want, just like Rain of Fire. This deals a heavy amount of Shadow Flame damage to all enemies within a targeted area, and afflicts them with Immolate. It has a base 3-second cast, a 40-yard range, and a cooldown of 1 minute. This is great not only for the damage, but for the Soul Shard generation as well. Remember, Immolate is one of your Soul Shard generators, so this lets you throw out a ton of Chaos Bolts or Rains of Fire. Next up we have Soul Harvest. When you use this, you immediately generate 5 Soul Shards, so there's some huge burst potential here, and I imagine this is going to be the go-to choice for PvP. This has a base 2-second cast and a 2-minute cooldown. For the level 75 tier we have Demonic Circle. This is a base 0.5-second cast ability that when you use it, it puts a summoning circle on the ground for 6 minutes. Whenever you use this spell again, it teleports you to that summoning circle, and it also clears all snares. This still has a 30-second cooldown like it does in Draenor. It also has been modularized into one ability now, so if you want to reposition it while it's already active, you have to click off the buff. Once again, you already know my opinion on this if you saw my other Warlock videos. This is another spell that I think should have stayed baseline. We don't have any baseline mobility spells, so we really feel vulnerable, and I think we're going to have a rough time in PvP, especially if you don't take this. Anyways, next up we have Burning Rush, which is exactly the same. This gives you a 50% movement speed boost at the cost of 4% of your maximum life per second until you cancel it. You also may not be slowed below 100% of your normal movement speed while it's active. And we also have Dark Pact. This is a big absorb shield that sacrifices 20% of your demon's current health and gives you 400% of that sacrificed health as an absorb shield for 20 seconds. If you don't have a demon active, it takes 20% of your life instead. This is most effective when you have no demon out, since your highest health demon is the Voidwalker, which always has exactly 50% of your maximum life. So if you want to get the highest absorb shield possible, you're going to want to dismiss your pet before using it. For the level 90 tier, we have our Grimoires. First up, we have the Grimoire of Supremacy, which used to be one of our big level 100 talents, but it looks like they moved it back a tier. This allows you to control your big cooldown demons, the Doomguard or the Infernal, indefinitely, so it's very strong. Next up, we have the Grimoire of Service. This summons a second demon to fight for you for 25 seconds, and it deals 100% increased damage for its duration. It also uses its special ability when you summon it. The Imp cleanses you, the Voidwalker taunts your target, the Succubus seduces, and the Fellhunter uses Spellock, so it's very versatile, and I think it shines in PvP especially. Next up, we have the Grimoire of Sacrifice, which is seen a rework. This now sacrifices your demon to give you demonic power. This causes your spells to sometimes deal additional AoE shadow damage. I'm not sure if this is a bug or not, but right now it looks like this has a 100% proc chance. The only thing that seems to limit it is the internal cooldown, so this one looks incredibly strong in its current state. Finally, for the level 100 tier, we have Wreak Havoc. This causes your Havoc spell to now last 20 seconds, and it no longer has a cooldown. It is still limited to one target, but this really helps out our 2-target AoE, and it also allows us to switch that on the fly. Next up, we have a new spell, and that's Channel Demon Fire. This is a channel spell, and it launches 15 Fellfire bolts to a random target afflicted by Immolate over a base 3 seconds, which is increased by haste. It has a 40-yard range and a base 15-second cooldown. The damage is pretty high. It's equivalent to about 4 Incinerates, and with the short cooldown I think it's really powerful. It gives you a lot of burst on an already bursty class, and anything that makes the rotation more interesting is always welcome in my book, so overall I think this is a really solid spell. And lastly, for the level 100 tier, we have another passive, Soul Conduit. This one is pretty straightforward. This gives you every soul shard you spend a 20% chance to be refunded. It's really simple but really strong at the same time. This works with every single shard you spend, so Chaos Bolt can actually refund 2 shards if you're lucky, and Rain of Fire can refund all 3. So overall, just a really good tier, I think. I'm glad they actually moved that Grimoire of Supremacy to the level 90 tier because it used to be the obvious choice in the level 100 tier, so this lets us actually experiment with these new effects without feeling like we're nerfing ourselves. And that's it for all of the talents, as of this build anyways. Next up, I'll talk about the artifact for the Destruction Warlock, and that's the Scepter of Sargeras. The artifact itself has an ability called Dimensional Rift. This has 3 charges, a 45-second recharge, and when you use it, it opens a dimensional rift that'll barrage your enemy with Fell Bolts. Following the scheme with our mastery, there are 3 different portals that do varying damage, and it's completely random what you get. I'll start off with the most damaging one, and that's Chaos Barrage. This throws out around 20 small Fell Bolts to your target. Its damage is roughly around 7 or 8 Incinerates. The purple one throws out slightly more powerful Shadow Bolts, but at a slower pace. Overall, its damage is equal to around 3 Incinerates. And lastly, we have another green portal that throws out a big Fell Bolt equal in damage to roughly 2 Incinerates. So like I said, they vary pretty wildly, which follows along with the scheme of things. You can have all 3 portals out at once since you have 3 charges, so it can get really bursty. You can also use this while moving. That along with Conflagrate makes you feel more mobile because you don't have to completely stop your damage when you need to run somewhere. So overall I think it's one of the better artifact abilities. These artifacts also have some interesting passives you can unlock. You can find calculators for this all over the place. I'll have a link in the description, but I'll go over the more major ones here. First up, we have Dimension Ripper. This gives your Incinerate spell a 15% chance to reduce the remaining cooldown on your Dimensional Rift by 45 seconds. Once again, this sort of ties into the RNG factor here. This is nice not only for the proc, but the fact that this is tied to Incinerate is a good choice because now that we're off the Ember system, Incinerate is just a filler spell, and there's no real reason to use it unless you just don't have anything else available. Next up, we have Conflagration of Chaos. This gives your Conflagrate spell to have a chance to make your next Conflagrate crit, and its damage is increased by your critical strike chance, just like the way Chaos Bolt works. The buff itself lasts for 20 seconds, so it's plenty of time if you procced it off your second charge. Through some testing, the proc chance seems quite low, maybe around the 10 to 20% range, which is rough considering the cooldown. So this isn't something you'll see active all the time. We also have the Lord of Flames. This causes your Rain of Fire to summon an Infernal to serve you for 8 seconds. It's actually a baby Infernal. They probably did that because it would get too hectic in melee range with all of the new effects this expansion. And they behave like a normal Infernal. They'll attack your target and AoE at the same time. One thing to note is that they don't override each other if you summon multiple ones, so you can get quite the Infernal army out. And lastly, we have Eternal Struggle. This causes your life tap to also reduce the damage you take by 30% for 6 seconds, so just a really nice defensive boost here. Warlock survivability is something I've been concerned about since they removed our summon circle as a baseline, so I thought this was worth mentioning because it's quite substantial. The rest of these are pretty generic, some interesting stuff but mainly just percentage increases to abilities and whatnot. I'll mouse over these here quickly and you can pause the video if you want to read them, and like I said, I'll have a link to that calculator in the description if you want to check them out. You don't have to choose between any of these traits, you'll be able to get them all eventually. You just need to get enough artifact power, which you'll get by questing, PvPing, raiding, and so on. And that's it for all of the abilities, talents, and artifact traits, at least for this alpha build anyways. I'm sure they'll add more or change some stuff later on, but that's okay because the purpose of this video is just to give you a basic idea of how the spec is played, and that's something that's very unlikely to change as they update the game. Now let's put all of this together. The only way to get an idea of how the spec is played is to see it in action, so as always I'll show you some basic fights here and narrate them a bit. Here are some single target fights. For the notable talents I have Shadow Burn for when they're low on health for that extra soul shard. I also have the Grimoire of Supremacy so you can see my permanent Infernal. I grabbed Channel Demon Fire just for the sake of showing you a new spell, and I also picked up Reverse Entropy so I don't have to worry about life tapping. With the current soul shard generation there's very little downtime. It seems like I cast Incinerate very rarely because I always either have soul shards to spend, or I just have other cooldowns ready to go. It completely depends on your talent choice though. Having Shadow Burn of course helps in this regard, and Channel Demon Fire as well since that's on such a short cooldown. The damage can vary quite a bit as you would imagine with the way our mastery works. Our random artifact ability contributes to that as well. This gives you the potential to burn through your enemies insanely fast if you're lucky, but not so much if you're unlucky. Here are some AoE fights. For talents I have Fire and Brimstone, which is pretty much a must-have if you're spec'd for AoE. I also have Shadow Fury for that AoE stun, and Cataclysm for that big AoE damage and Immolate application. And once again I have the Grimoire of Supremacy for that permanent Infernal. And it's pretty standard. I hit him with the Cataclysm for that AoE Immolate, make sure Rain of Fire is up, and then it's just Incinerate spam until they're dead. Overall our AoE is quite good. It's on par with Affliction's AoE, which as you may remember is incredibly good right now. Keep in mind this is without that Lord of Flames artifact trait where you get that free Infernal when you use Rain of Fire, so this isn't even its full potential. So we're really solid in both AoE and single targets so far this expansion, which honestly out of all of the specs I played so far, it's pretty rare. And lastly, here's a longer single target fight. I have pretty much the same talents as my short single target fight with the exception of Soul Conduit instead of Channel Demon Fire. Honestly, it's probably stronger. Here you can see it proccing like crazy here, allowing me to just spam Chaos Bolt. You'll also see me use Dimensional Rift here and there. Unfortunately, I got pretty unlucky and I got the purple portal a couple times in a row here. But overall the damage is quite good even if you get unlucky with your mastery. You can see when I do get lucky with some of the Chaos Bolt crits. That's when the mastery procs on the higher end. Once again, there's very little downtime where you're spamming Incinerate and you're waiting on shards, which is nice. And that's all there is to it. Hopefully you have a better understanding and feel of how their core gameplay works. It's very RNG based as you can see. I think it's something that people will love or hate. It's interesting in the sense that in some situations you can have crazy high luck and proc high mastery and good dimensional rifts over and over to give you some insane damage, and in other situations you can just get the worst of the worst. This spec has its highs and lows, which really plays into the volatile Fellweaver class identity that they're going for. I'm sure it'll be frustrating for a lot of people as well, especially if you're trying to progress with your guild and raids. You really want that consistency so you can make progress, and with this spec if luck isn't on your side you're just not going to get that. I personally don't mind the RNG. I think it's an interesting variable that'll make you love or hate the spec, but like I said, Warlock isn't my main class and I'm definitely not a top tier raider, so take that as a very casual opinion. It will be interesting to see how things progress though. There are a lot of people giving their feedback in both directions, so we'll just have to wait and see who Blizzard listens to. I think I'll like the spec either way though. It really was fun playing it and I had a lot of fun making this video for you guys. With this I've now officially covered all 3 Warlock specs and overall it's a really fun class I think. Each spec varies quite a bit from each other. If I had to pick a favorite it would probably still be Demonology just because its playstyle is so unique. Destruction isn't far behind though. They have a couple very minor issues that I mentioned here and there, but overall I think it's a really fun spec. If you want to see more Destruction gameplay, I also did a full dungeon run. No commentary on that though, just some raw gameplay for those of you who want to see more of what this spec is capable of. I'll have an annotation for that right here and a link in the description if you want to see that. And as always, feel free to leave me a message about your opinion on the state of destruction for Legion, especially all of you veteran Warlocks out there. I'd like to hear a pro's perspective on how this class is changing, and if you think the new RNG-based style is a good thing or a bad thing. Whether or not you like the changes, I hope you at least found this video informative, interesting, or entertaining in some way. Like I said, I had a lot of fun making it, and I hope you had a lot of fun watching it. Thanks for checking it out. I'll be doing guides like this for every spec for every class in the game, so keep an eye out for those if you're interested. And if you have any feedback or suggestions, feel free to leave me a message. There's always room for improvement. And once again, I'll have a poll up in the description if you want to vote on the next class. I think at this point I have about a third of the DPS specs covered, so hopefully you can find a spec in there that you'd like to see. Anyways, I hope you found this video helpful. Give it a like if you liked it, and if you really liked it, let me know in the comments and subscribe. And as always, thanks for watching, good luck, and peace!